So I know we haven't started yet, but I know that everyone always asks. I got my results back from my last exam and I passed with distinction. So I'm one exam closer to my MBA.
Congratulations, Sherry. Good news.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, it's 3 more to go. 2022 is my year.
When do you hope to be finished?
I should write my last exam in December, but I plan on, I might do 2 in August. So we'll see. Yeah.
So Sherry, are you going for your PhD?
Well, no. I don't even have to consider that. No, not even an option. Master's is good enough for me.
We can call you a doctor then.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I don't think I have it in me, Arthur.
Yeah.
This meeting is now called to order. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. For roll call, Councillor Ham has sent her regrets. We'll now take a moment of reflection and respect, please. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda.
That council adopts the agenda for the meeting of February 2nd, 2022, as amended by adding the following items. Public comments from Donna Jean Griffin and Lynn Pattinson received February 1st, 2022, relating to minor variance application A0222, and public comments from Donna Kalman and Bill Robinson received February 2nd, 2022, relating to minor variance application A0222.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Barber, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Delegations and public meetings, and we do have a public meeting this evening. Josh, could you please read the resolution?
That council recess at 7:01 p.m. to commence a committee of adjustment hearing to consider the application for minor variance A0222 respecting 80 Oak Street, and the applicant is Penner.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Deputy Mayor Andrews, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The Committee of Adjustment of the Town of Aylmer is convened to consider application A0222. Additional information relating to the applications is available for inspection between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. weekdays at Aylmer Town Hall. Signed written submissions shall be accepted by the Secretary Treasurer prior to or during the hearing, and such submission shall be available for inspection by any interested party. In addition, if a party who is notified does not attend the hearing, the committee can proceed and the party is not entitled to any further notice of hearings. Submissions or requests for notice can be sent to jbrick@town.aylmer.on.ca. A copy of the decision will be mailed to those persons who attend or are represented at the hearing, and those who have filed a written request with the secretary for notice of the committee's decision. The committee will receive input in the following order: agent or applicant, the public, manager of planning and development, and the clerk. Application A01-22 is made by Jacob Penner on behalf of 2660711 Ontario Incorporated, owner of the property known municipally as 80 Oak Street in the town of Aylmer. The applicant is requesting a minor variance from the requirements of the town zoning bylaw number 57-99 as amended. The applicant is seeking relief from section 9(3) zone requirements of the residential type 2 R2 zone in order to enlarge the buildable area of the property by reducing minimum front yard depth and exterior side yard width setbacks by 1.5 meters or 5 feet. Is the applicant or agent present? And if so, do you wish to speak to the application? Josh, is the agent here this evening?
Through you, Madam Chair, they are not.
Okay, thank you. Could the clerk confirm whether or not any members of the public wish to speak to the application?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, 2 members of the public registered to speak to the application, Louise Weaverink and Donna Jean Griffin, both registered earlier today and were provided the login information for this virtual meeting this evening.
Okay, thank you, Josh. I think what we'll do, and I'll ask Josh if you could verify this, should we hear from the members of the public first, or should we have the manager of planning and development provide comments?
Through your worship, it's really up to your discretion. At this point, the manager of planning and development would be prepared to provide comments if that's what you'd like to hear at this point.
Yes, I just wanted to check with you on that. And I think if Christy is available, I would like to hear the comments about the application first. And that way the committee has an opportunity to get a better understanding from our planner. And at that point, we'll hear from the public. Thank you, Christy, and go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to members of the committee. The purpose of this application before you this evening is to, as the chair has noted, request relief from 2 setback requirements. The first being the front yard depth, so the front property line back, and the second being the exterior side yard width, which is the side lot line adjacent to Pierce back. So quick, if you could pull up the illustration. So right now the required setback would be the blue line. And what the applicant is requesting is that be moved slightly by 1.5 meters or approximately 5 feet to enlarge the buildable area. As I've noted in the report, exterior side yards are intended to really match up with the property to the south, where their front yards would typically be fronting onto, in this case, Pierce. In this case, there is a bit of variability in the setbacks. So the applicant is requesting just to shift it over a little bit in order to either gain more setback distance between the existing dwelling to the east or to accommodate a larger footprint. Just for clarification, I want to note that the application before the committee is not proposing a change of use to those uses permitted on the zoning of these lands. The application is not proposing to adjust the lot lines or to change the lot size in any way. And the application is not proposing to remove the existing street trees. So these lands are located within the residential type 2 zone. And within the agenda for this evening, the provisions were provided for the committee's information. The R2 zone extends across the lower portion of Oak Street. So properties located immediately to the east and the next 4 properties over are all within this R2 zone. I do note that the R2 zone does permit 2-unit dwellings in forms such as a converted dwelling, a duplex dwelling, a semi-detached dwelling, or a single detached dwelling with an additional residential unit. These are as of right land use permissions. Just to clarify, if the applicant were to meet those minimum setback requirements that exist on the land today, so that's 7.0 meter or 23-foot setback from the property line on the exterior and front yard, they would be issued a building permit. So this is not a question of the use in the property. It's really pertaining to the setback requirements. So with that, the application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. Agencies that were circulated and internal staff did not indicate any concerns with the application. Since circulation, staff have received 6 calls and 3 letters outlining concerns associated with this application. The letters that have been received are included in the agenda package this evening, and the clerk will read the submissions following public presentation. So just briefly, the concerns of the neighboring landowners are predominantly centered on preserving the character of this neighborhood, both in terms of built form. This is an established neighborhood generally comprised of single detached dwellings, and also preserving the natural heritage features, being those tree-lined streets. The letters that were provided in the dialogue that I had with the neighbors did note additional concerns related to preserving home values, corner visibility at that stop sign, potential drainage concerns, and increased traffic. So it's very unusual for us to have this amount of public participation. So we do appreciate people participating in this public planning process. And we're given the opportunity following my my overview to speak in more detail about these comments. So as I noted, there are no changes proposed to the permitted uses of the R2 zone. And at this time, there is no proposal to do anything to those existing street trees. They are on municipal property. So when we evaluate a minor variance application, we do it using the 4 tests prescribed by the Planning Act. And I'm just going to quickly run through each of the tests briefly. So the first test is, are the variances considered minor in nature? To this, I would say yes. The variance being requested is a 1.5 meter or 5-foot variance along the front and exterior side yards. Just looking at the surrounding properties, particularly that to the south and along Oak Street, this is not a substantial variance. This is fairly nominal and would not be out of character with the surrounding properties. The second test is, are the variances an appropriate use of the land, to which I did respond yes. The variances would support the development and intensification of this currently vacant and underutilized site. There is an objective within the town's housing policies that indicates that a target of 15% of all new housing should be accommodated through intensification. So making efficient use of existing infrastructure on the lands and that are servicing the lands, which are appropriately designated, so they are in that low density land use designation and zoned R2, is sound land use planning and completely supported by staff. The third test is, do the variances maintain the intent of the official plan? Again, just reiterating, we do have a density target for intensification, and the low density land use designation does permit a range of housing types, including single detached, semi-detached, duplex, and converted dwellings. So the proposal is consistent with the town's official plan policies and objectives. The final test is, do the variances maintain the intent of the zoning bylaw? I've explained in the report that the intent of providing these setbacks from the property lines is to promote that consistent building line, but also to provide for adequate separation from the street in support of public safety. The variance that is being requested would still maintain approximately 18 feet setback from the property line plus boulevard. And therefore, it is demonstrated that there is sufficient setback maintained, and that since the building line is already variable, it would not have detrimental impacts. So overall, these considerations have been taken into account, as well as the concerns of the neighboring landowners. In my report, I did recommend that the application be approved. However, in light of the correspondence that we've received and the input that we're going to hear this evening, it may be advisable for the committee tonight to consider deferring a decision in order to allow the members of this committee sufficient time to review that correspondence, particularly that's come in since the agenda was published, and consider the public input we are about to receive. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. And what I'm going to do is, I won't have any questions from the members yet. I would like to hear from the public first, if that's okay with the committee. So welcome, Louise. It's your turn to speak, and so we're happy to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Mayor and town councilors, we appreciate our opportunity to voice our opinion here. Excuse me. We welcome the opinion of Peter Barber, who's familiar with the neighborhood, lived in the neighborhood, and has some understanding of our feelings here. I know it's not all about feelings, and we appreciate what you do. We appreciate what town council does, and we respect your decisions. However, we had a little additional input, and I had a very pleasant conversation with the town planner. One objection I have, she says it's a minor variance of 5 feet. 5 feet in someone's mind is minimal, in someone else's mind. Yes, it can affect a lot of things, 5 feet. So I would argue that to say that's a minimal request, no, 5 feet is 5 feet. And what I would like to say, I agree with the decision, or it's not a decision, a recommendation that you would entertain some of the letters that came in today. I've spoken with several neighbors who all were concerned, but all of you know, in this time of COVID, it's difficult. We used to be able to go to town council and voice our opinions, and not everybody is comfortable with technology. Several neighbors I approached it, what I wouldn't know how to do that. I wouldn't know, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't know how to do that. So I think, although I'm here to speak for people and I can't say everything that they would say, that you would recognize that people are not as able to express their concerns as they would be in the past, pre-COVID. The letter that came in from the Kalman and the Robinsons, I spoke to them, they were very concerned. This is directly behind their prestigious property there on Talbot Street. And yes, it's a vacant lot. We all realize that at some point this land will be developed. That is not the problem. What we would desire is it's a single family home. By approving this variance, you are enabling a duplex to be built there. It's not, and I realize zoning bylaws allow a duplex, and if that's the property owner's intent, we understand that, but you are enabling a duplex by approving the variance. Variance guidelines were put in the past to protect homeowners in the existing area. And so I would ask you to consider that fact, that if you make that decision to give the extra 5 feet, it enables a duplex, which we would prefer to be a single family home. And we understand that will be developed. Addressing the issue of the trees, the Pattinsons and Griffins have a concern. And yes, it's the intent to leave the trees existing. But as you all know, if you proceed with construction on a lot, you will be digging into the tree roots and disturbing it. It potentially could affect the trees along that area. A third point I had is there's a stop sign at the corner there. Will it impact the view? People think it's a relatively quiet neighborhood. It is, but when the high school is on, the students park on that street. Will there be parking room for a duplex and driveways and enough room clearance to see as you come around the corner? Already we have an issue when we come up to Talbot Street from Pierce, and I commend council that they removed the parking on Talbot Street because the view was difficult there to enter onto Talbot Street. But will this reduce the view coming down from Talbot Street to Pierce? It will in fact impact the value of our homes in the neighborhood. And yes, I realize that housing is what the planning committee, there is a lack of housing and they would like that. But a single family home in our mind would be more in character with the neighborhood. When we moved into the area, we asked to buy a 40-foot lot. We were told we had to buy a minimum 50-foot lot with a single family home and set back to the property line of the existing homes to preserve the character of the neighborhood. Now that was some years ago, but all of you know of the prestigious homes along Talbot Street, the Pattinson Homestead, the Toss, the Kelman Robinson home, the Swiss Cottage, and we feel that this would greatly be detrimental to them as well. Thank you for considering my request.
Thank you, Louise, for your presentation. Josh, do we have anyone else that would like to speak this evening?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I do believe we have a caller that is called into the meeting. If the caller could confirm that they're Donna Jean Griffin, then we'll be set to proceed.
Yes, that's me. This is Donna Jean Griffin.
Hi, Donna Jean. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor and the council for listening to me. I don't have a presentation like Louise. I was mostly concerned with the trees. So I today measured 35 feet from the middle of Pierce Street and then figured out which would be the right of way of the town and then where the tree was after that. The trees are 6 feet in from the right of way of the town. And then the building is supposed to be 35 feet. No, that's 35 feet to the lot line and the trees are 6 feet in from that. And then if you go out farther, the trees, it depends. If you give them 5 feet, they're going to be closer to the trees and they will dig up around the roots, and sooner or later, they'll probably cut them back to make room for roofs or something. And then they, later on, if they don't recover from this, they will probably die. But that's where the trees are, 6 feet inside the right of way. I am a little concerned also about the parking because the children park there all the time with their cars and it's very hard to see. I actually measured everything. I had a piece of paper. I have a question. Is the R2 in effect on the north side of Oak Street as well as the south side? Does anybody know?
Christy, are you prepared to answer that question?
I'm
Yes,
just curious.
Madam Chair.
ahead,
The north
Christy.
side of Oak Street is zoned residential type 1B. That is a larger lot size. It does not specifically permit semi-detached dwellings or 2 units. However, it does permit a single detached dwelling with an additional residential unit per the revisions we made to the zoning bylaw last fall.
Okay. And what is the difference between a semi-detached and a duplex? And also if it's R2 and you can have, which means you in one house, you can have a family living in the basement and a family on the main floor, or you can have a family living on the main floor and another family living in your garage. I forgot what I was going to say. I'm trying to figure out, never mind. I can't remember what I was going to say. I wrote it down. I lost a piece of paper. It's okay. It's just, this has nothing to do with trees. What I was concerned about mostly was the trees. And then you said it's going to be okay. I don't know whether it will or not, but I would like to, I know I don't have a vote, but I would like to say that I do not want them to move 5 feet closer to the road.
Okay, thank you very much, Donna Jean. Is that finishing your presentation or did you have more to share?
No, that's all. I lost the other piece of paper, so I don't know what I was going to say about the duplex and the semi-detached. I don't know. Are they the same thing?
Christy, could you answer that question, please?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. The way our zoning bylaw is structured is that a duplex is considered the up-down two-unit arrangement. So typically a ground floor with another unit above, whereas a semi-detached is a side-by-side. So that common walls in the middle of the two buildings, still a consolidated building, whereas in a semi-detached, it's more of a stacked arrangement.
Oh,
Sorry, in a
okay.
duplex, it's a stacked
No.
arrangement.
Backwards. The duplex is up and down and the semi-detached is side by side. Okay.
Yes.
No, thank you. That's all. I don't want to say anything else. I'll take up too much time. Go ahead. Thank you very
Thank you
much
so
for
much,
listening.
Donna Jean. Thank you. Josh, are there any other people that are wanting to speak to the council or to the committee today?
Through you, Madam Chair, those were our only registrations for this Committee of Adjustment hearing.
Okay, and so I will ask you, and I believe that Christie's brought it to our attention, are there any other communications related to this application?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So I'll just recollect all of the communications that were received. So we had received written correspondence on January 25th, and that was from the Weaver Links. And then we also received written correspondence yesterday on February the 1st from Griffin and Pattinson. And then we received additional correspondence early this afternoon. And that was comments from Kelman and Robinson. And I'll just note that these documents were uploaded to the agenda and they were also circulated to council in advance.
Thank you very much, Josh. Now I'll turn it over to the committee. Do you have any questions? Go ahead, Member Barber.
Thank you, Worship. First of all, I'd like to comment that I find it refreshing that the residents in the area have provided a comment on this particular application. I can't recall any minor variance application in the last few years that has generated such interest. I'd like a couple of questions answered if I could. The sketch of the property seems to indicate that the frontage will be toward Oak Street, and with the assurance that or the comment that the owner provided that they intend to maintain the trees on the west side, is that in effect where they intend to build?
Christy,
If I
would
could
you
ask,
be able to answer that?
Through you, Madam Chair. At this point in time, there's been no floor plan provided to staff. However, the way the zoning bylaw is structured, typically the shortest frontage is the front property line, which in this case would actually be Pierce. However, the existing services are located predominantly along Oak Street. We have confirmed with Public Works staff that connection at either point wouldn't be an issue. However, just based on the limitation of those street trees being at the front, it is very likely that the driveways and the front doors will face onto Oak, notwithstanding that not being the technical front yard.
okay, thank you for that. Second question that does evolve from that is, as no building plans have been submitted, is this structure going to be of a spec type, or would it be more upscale? Or do we know?
Go ahead, Christy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Member Barber. At this point in time, we don't know. I believe that the design of the structure to be placed on this lot is dependent upon whether or not this variance is secured. My understanding, the purpose of the application is really to enhance the buildable area, whether or not that's so that single floor dwellings can be accommodated. I'm not entirely sure. But it would be premature for the applicant to submit a building plan on a vacant lot when they're also applying for a variance. We can certainly request that clarification if this item is deferred. However, I'm just not sure it's available at this time.
Okay, thank you. One last question that was asked. Is it the intent of the owner to actually occupy one of the units?
Christy, could you answer that, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Member Barber. At this point in time, there's been no indication of whether or not these would be tenant occupied or owned. That being said, we do not have any authority to regulate whether or not these would be rented or owned. And I do remind the committee that we do have policy direction within our official plans in our town policy to encourage a range of types, tenures, and forms of housing. So while the two-unit dwelling is not subject to the site plan control process, we wouldn't see a detailed design. However, we do have a need for the full range and spectrum of housing types within our community.
Oh, good Lord.
Thank you for the comments. That was just a question that was asked, and I just thought I'd pass that along to the committee. Thank you for your response. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Oslach, and then I believe Member Charlton had a question. So we'll start with Member Oslach first. Go ahead.
This is a beautiful neighborhood with large trees, and it should be preserved as such. I like to defer this variance to further study.
Okay, thank you. Member Charlton, you're next.
Through your worship, I was just wondering if there was ever a site visit and a site visitation with the neighbors, or was it just Google Earth and GPS measured, or was there ever any contact at the site?
Christy, could you answer that, please?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, to Member Charlton. I have attended the site, and I have I do put the signs up myself. I have pictures of the site from a site walk. I've taken measurements with well, my phone, but measurements of the property so I could get a good idea of where the trees were relative to the property lines. I also took some evaluation of where the existing servicing stubs may be located. We had an old locate card. And I was out on site to try and confirm whether or not that was visible prior to the snow falling. There were no opportunities to meet staff meeting the neighborhood on site. That is not typical. I certainly don't discourage it, but just in the context of COVID and we being a single staff department, there's just not time to go out. That is the purpose of the circulation, the sign notification, and to give individual landowners the opportunity to speak to council. I do work quite closely with the applicant in advance of submitting. This property did go up for sale. So I had dialogue with both the realtor and the purchaser prior to acquiring the property. And it was identified that at that time that there may be opportunities on this property to develop it there is an opportunity to develop it for residential use, and that reducing the setbacks would not be, from a planning perspective, considered out of character for this neighborhood.
Go ahead. Do you have a secondary question?
Yeah, further to that. So are two houses fronting onto Oak Street then, and one on the side street? Is that how it is laid out?
Go ahead, Christy.
Through you, Madam Chair. At this point in time, there's no layout. I do apologize that the illustration in the report may have been a little bit misleading. 3 units are not proposed. That illustration was really intended to identify the different property lines relative to being a corner versus an interior lot. It was not representative of this particular proposal.
So through your worship, so there are only 2 residents proposed then for this site?
Go ahead, Christy.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor or to Member Charlton. At this point in time, there is actually no proposal. It's just that may be an opportunity that they wish to pursue pending the outcome of this minor variance decision. I did note that 2-unit dwelling is permitted as of right on this property. So if the applicant was not requesting this variance and was going to build to the 7-meter or 23-foot setback, they could come into the office tomorrow and apply for a building permit. We would not be in a position to say no. They are satisfying all applicable law. The only reason this is in front of the committee this evening is requesting that variance or relief to the setback requirements.
Through your worship, then I can see two houses going on that property and fitting in with the neighborhood quite well. Three, I think, is really pushing it. I know we're trying to intensify or make our housing more dense. I don't think maybe that is the neighborhood to do it in. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say. I would prefer deferring this decision for some time anyway. Thank you.
Go ahead, Member Andrews.
Thank you, through your worship. So if we decided to defer, what actually are we requesting staff to do at that point? What would be the position to defer?
Well, I guess I'll have to answer that unless Andy has a better answer. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, just if it assists Chair French, I know there is a lot of topics being discussed, but really we're here for kind of the 5-foot thing, and everything else is additional. It's not really before us. So Christy's done a great job answering all the questions from the public. I don't think there's any outstanding direction to staff from the committee, but the one thing that the committee hasn't heard from is the applicant. So maybe we could defer this and reach out to the applicant and see if they could have an opportunity to come and maybe participate in another meeting and answer some of the outstanding questions for council or for the public.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Go ahead, Member Andrews.
Thank you, and thank you for that answer. That was that makes sense, and that's probably a really good suggestion. I'm really indifferent to this. However, I think that everyone who owns a property, regardless of where it is in town, thinks that it's a great neighborhood. They don't want to see change, and I get that. I had the same thing in my backyard. So to suggest that any one neighborhood is maybe, a step up better. And I don't mean it to sound rude the way that it's coming out, but, everybody has the opportunity to, build and do what we need to do to move on and, provide housing options in town. I knew the previous owner, and I'm sure she'd be, quite upset at this even in coming to council, because I'm sure she would have loved to have had that vacant lot sit vacant for forever. But, that's just unfortunately not something that I think we as a council should take into consideration. This is a business deal. I get it, and it's not an easy decision. But, for the sake of housing opportunities, this is a vacant lot. It's unserviced. It's there's an opportunity here to provide housing that we really need in the town. Let's bring in the owner to see if he what the plan is to build, and maybe that would satisfy the residents, and then it would give us maybe better direction.
Okay, thank you, Member Andrews. And I'm going to make a couple of comments. I think, first of all, we've kind of misunderstood this whole situation. Basically, our only choice here tonight is just to say if we're going to allow the 5 feet. That's it. Like, we really, at this point of this meeting, it's really no concern to us what type of home, as long as they follow the rules. And we've put the rules in place because the province gave us the mandates, and we've done that. We've done our official plan. We have to work with the county and follow their official plan, which is exactly basically the same thing as what we're doing. We have to be on the same, level playing field with the county. So basically, all that's being asked here today is about the 5 feet for the setback. That's it. As far as site plans, buildings, the gentleman that owns this property, and I think Christy's been trying to make this point, is that he can go in there, and he was just being courteous and asking us for the 5 feet setback. He can go in there tomorrow to the office and get a building permit, and he can start building, and there would be nothing we could do about it. because he is following all the rules. He's just asking for the 5 feet. Now, I'm not suggesting that I don't agree with deferring it. I'm just trying to explain to the committee so that we kind of all understand what's going on. And there aren't going to be 2 buildings on that lot, or 3. There's going to be 1 building. That's it. And it will be a semi-detached, but it's 1 building, and they share a wall, but it's just 1 building. So we have to wrap our head around that, if that's in fact what the person wants to do. And as Christy has mentioned, he hasn't specifically said he was going to do that, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct, Christy? He hasn't said that. So I'm just trying to point out to the committee. So when we defer this, that's food for thought for us. So if in fact we are going to defer it, because we will be looking at the resolution shortly. And if there aren't any further questions or comments, just so we've all had the chance to get our opinion out there. And if there are any more questions or comments, you're more than welcome to ask. Go ahead, Member Chapman.
Through you, Your Worship, to Christy. Can you just clarify something? You mentioned the north side of Oak Street and the south side of Oak Street being zoned differently. And could you just clarify what you had said? Because I think I misheard what you said.
Go ahead, Christy.
Chair? Thank you. To you, sorry, committee. Right now, the south side, so the portion between Pierce and almost all the way to Elm on the south side, excluding the last large lot, are all zoned residential type 2. In Elmer, we have a number of residential zones. We have R1 and then R1A through R1C. Those are varying lot sizes. They're only slightly nuanced in differences. The main differences are R1, R2, and R3, and then our RM zones. But the north side is what we have R1B, or yeah, R1B. To the south side, we have the R2. And this is very typical. I'm not sure why that dividing line of Oak Street was put in place, likely because the south side is closer proximity to the core. It looks like, you know, there was intended to be at some point in time potential for density in this area. There are 5 lots along that Oak Street portion, and then over, to the east, that are all in the R2 zone. So the R1 series of zones is typically limited to a single detached dwelling and doesn't provide that 2-unit flexibility, except for where it's a single detached dwelling with an additional residential unit. And that is per the direction of the Planning Act to allow the additional residential unit in any single, semi, or townhouse on an individual lot. The R2, however, is a little bit different in that it specifically includes a range of permitted uses, which include the duplex, the semi-detached, a converted dwelling, and then a single detached dwelling with that additional residential unit. So as you go from R1 to R3, just the range of uses tend to increase, variability in lot size. So R2 is typically a moderately sized lot with up to 2 units. And then R3, you're getting into a little bit larger lots with up to 3 units. So again, they are all still considered low density residential uses. It's not a substantial change in neighborhood density to add a second additional unit in any of these properties. It is a permission that's in place. But as for why that strategy was adopted, I haven't drilled down deep enough into our zoning bylaw and official plan to really figure out why that north side versus south side are substantially different.
Do you have another question, Councillor Chapman?
I do, thank you, Your Honor. So basically what you're telling us is if we grant the 5-foot variance, that the chances of them having a semi-detached are greater than if we don't allow the variance and they still want to have a 2-unit facility. It would be a duplex, which would be on top of each other.
Go ahead, Christy.
Through you, Madam Chair. No, that's not quite it. They could apply again, like I said, tomorrow. They would just be looking at a smaller footprint to fit within that blue line, whereas what they've requested is they fit within that red line, which has a little bit of additional area. buildable area along the top and side. The permitted uses of the R2 zone do permit that semi-detached or duplex dwelling, regardless of what the setbacks are. They have just requested that the setbacks be decreased in order to increase that buildable area. But like I said, it's an as of right land use permission. We're not looking at changing the range of permitted uses. We are really just focused on that setback.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any further comments or questions? Okay, I don't see any hands up. So first of all, I want to thank our members for asking a lot of questions and looking into this thoroughly. And I appreciate our delegations that came today, and I appreciate the letters we received. And we like to be fair and flexible and transparent, and that's what this whole process is about, and working together to get to the best conclusion that we can get to. So at this point, I would like to see someone, if possible. I think we should be deferring this. If I have the support of the committee, is there anyone willing to make the motion to defer it? Okay, I see enough hands. So of course, I believe member Oslach's hand went up first, and then member Barber. So with that, Josh, we've got somebody to move in second. Do you have a resolution for the deferral?
Certainly, through you, this is moved by member Oslach, seconded by member Barber, that the report plan 0322 entitled Planning Evaluation Report, application for minor variance A0222, 80 Oak Street, Penner, be received by the Committee of Adjustment for information, and that the application decision be deferred to the February 16th regular virtual meeting of council, where the subsequent Committee of Adjustment hearing will be held.
Okay, thank you, Josh. And with that, are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, Josh, could you read the next resolution, please?
That the Committee of Adjustment hearing is adjourned at 7:45 p.m.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Member Chapman and member Charlton, all those in favor? And that's carried. And the next resolution, please.
That the council meeting be reconvened at 7:45 p.m.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Oslach, are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is adoption of council and committee minutes. And the first one up is minutes to approve.
That council approves the following minutes: regular virtual meeting of council held on January the 19th, 2022.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. And the next item up is minutes to receive.
That council receives the following minutes: meeting minutes of the Town of Elmer Police Services Board held on December the 14th, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Barber, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is the consent agenda.
That items 7.1 and 7.2 of the February 2nd, 2022 consent agenda be received as information with actions to be taken as noted.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Now we'll move into action items, and the first report is OPNS 01-22.
That report OPNS 0122 entitled Engineering Award, Lagoon Optimization and Expansion be received as information, and that council accept the proposal from the Ontario Clean Water Agency as presented, and further, that council authorizes an exemption to the procurement policy to authorize staff to retain the Ontario Clean Water Agency to undertake a review of lagoon performance and prepare a report to address optimization and expansion.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman, and Councillor Barber. And I'll turn it over to you, Rob. Good evening.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Very pleased to present this report today, and you'll notice it's a report recommending that we award to the Ontario Clean Water Agency the work to prepare a roadmap for the sewage treatment lagoons expansion. So I'm happy to see this before council. The reason I'm recommending the single source award to Aqua, you'll notice that it's not a mega project. It's not for the complete upgrade and expansion, sort of a soup to nuts. It's a stepped, staggered expansion based on our growth projections and the capabilities within our existing system, keeping the long-term vision alive to make sure we satisfy the regulatory bodies in the end. But I feel that other than a super mega project, I think we're best to take this step by step, slowly, and move forward incrementally based on our growth projections. And I think that Aqua is sort of in a unique position to give us that roadmap to make sure the one area that we expand is also good for the future and addresses sort of our needs now. And I think with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Are there any questions concerning this report? Go ahead, Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. To Rob, if I may, are there any growth projections that would make a comprehensive step-by-step process not the right way to go? If you can understand that thought.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Barber, I believe I do. That's why I think I'm recommending this approach. I think it will work for us. The old school way of looking at those lagoons was strictly flow based, and now you're looking at what the treatment is coming out of the long run or the short run. So what effluent is coming out? Where are the pinch points in the treatment process, rather than do we just have enough flow coming in and out? And I think when we look at those, that the stepped approach is probably the best, incrementally moving that bar to gain us capacity as we go, rather than undertaking the mega project. Those mega projects are really tough to manage as well. When you look at an expansion, you're going to have to look at, reports down the road for the receiving body, the stream assimilation study, how it impacts Catfish Creek going forward. And to package all that up in one expansion is a huge undertaking, one that I'm really not convinced is the right way for us at this stage. It might be as we make these incremental changes, at some point we have to take a big leap. I don't think that's the right way for us at this time, though, if that answers your question, Councillor Barber.
Thank you. A good explanation.
Councillor Charlton, go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship. So I'm wondering how much more capacity are these steps going to get us? Because sooner or later we're going to be at capacity. Are we gonna have room for like 60 acres of industrial land and 2 subdivisions before we have to do a mega project? Thank you.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Charlton, that's the goal, is for us to keep ahead in the treatment side, working with the planning projections. That's one of the first exercises we're going to do with Aquas. They're going to assess our system. We're going to sit down and say, here's our 5-year projections, our 10-year projections, and our 20-year projections. First of all, we have to address the 5-year, but I want to make sure everything that we do in the 5-year is still working for us 20 years out. I don't want to do something now that's, we should have not done in the future, if that makes any sense, Carl.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship, to Rob. What is the acreage at present? Is it 75 acres that we have out there?
Through you to Councillor Oslach, I'm not sure of that, the value of the total lagoons and filter beds, and we also have additional land out there for expansion at some point of the filter beds. I don't know the exact number of what we have out there.
This is what I'm contemplating, that we do have enough room for expansion, of Fifth Lagoon or et cetera, that we have to buy land in the future, that we have to go to a mechanical plant. And, that's very expensive, I understand. But I'm just worried about that we have enough property out there to afford an expansion.
Through your worship to Councillor Oshlack, that's what this roadmap is going to show us, where we'll have to be to stay ahead of it, and at what point all of those triggers come into play. So we might be, a few years down the road before we have to look at land, or we might not have to do it for 25 years.
Thank you, Rob.
Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next report is OPNS 02-22.
That report, OPNS 02-22, entitled Program Update, Bulk Waste Collection 2021, be received for information.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Chapman. Good evening, Christian. I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you, Your Worship, and good evening to members of council. Again, through you, Your Worship, I could just go over the report. I find the best way to look at this report is in two steps. So the first step is just kind of going over the 2021 bulk waste program. That took place in October. It was the second week. It was Tuesday until Friday. We do this every year. So this was our first year with Miller Waste, which is our new collection provider. We actually saw a total of 105 tons collected during that 4-day span. That's about 26 tons per day. That's an increase of 70% since 2020 also. That's the highest total of the past 5 years. So that's just looking at 2021, going over that. The 105 tons was a bit surprising to Miller Waste. Their projections weren't quite that high, but even despite this, they handled it and completed their daily route successfully. So again, just to kind of recap, the 2021 collection was 70% increase in total tonnage above, 3% increase in tipping fees, rising industry fees, and we still only came in at about 20% more total operations cost. In fact, we achieved the lowest collection cost per ton in the past 5 years, that being $201 per ton collected. So all that being said, the 2022 program, we expect to go very similar in terms of dates, tons, and collection. So that's just the first narrow look. But what happened is we started to look at the collection program from a broader scope. We wanted to kind of understand what was driving the increase in costs, though we did see that it was, slightly smaller than what we were expecting when we first found out we had 105 tons collected. What we found after having some discussions, internal discussions with staff and discussions with Miller Waste, was that we wanted to initially just bring our total tonnage down, thinking that would reduce the total cost overall. By doing this, we thought we could set up a metal drop-off bin in town for the 2022 program, and perhaps residents could bring their any metal to this bin, and that would reduce the total weight at the curb and actually generate some revenue for us. Or perhaps we could implement some more rules, because we are pretty lenient with our rules. We allow quite a lot, and rightfully so. But either way, we still found that once we started diving into the data, that by reducing our tonnage, it wasn't going to reduce our total costs. In fact, we found that 80% of our total costs for this program sit just in collection alone. So this is due to the fact that each route must be completed regardless of total tonnage at the curb. So in short, less material does reduce the collection time, but it doesn't reduce the billable hours. Like, the driver still has to do the same route every day. So the 2021 collection costs were not cause for concern. But moving forward, they very well could be. And that's the point of our second part of this report. That's why staff felt necessary to include an example of what this program could become in the future as Elmer continues to grow and the collection industry continues to evolve. The example of an Amnesty Day at our community recycling center is one way we could completely eliminate collection costs further down the road and gain greater control over this program. So to summarize this report, if we just look at the 2021 bulk waste program, it was successful when we compare it to previous years. Despite rising costs across the board and a 5-year high in total tonnage, we succeeded in providing residents with a high level of service while also achieving fiscally responsible program costs. And while we do not recommend any major changes to the 2022 program, we feel it's necessary to report on our findings and allow council to have the larger scope discussion on the bulk waste program in the years to come. So if I can help answer any questions or be part of the discussion, that summarizes it.
Okay, thank you, Christian. Are there any questions or comments for Christian? Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Through you, your worship, my comment would be the bulk waste program, it seems to work. I'm sure the numbers were higher because more people were home and had the opportunity to clean out their basements that they don't always have. The concern that I have is if we start having drop-off points, people who are elderly and disabled would not have access to those drop-off points. People who are of low income may not have the transportation to take it to the waste management center. So even though there's a cost involved to the community, it's a service that we need to look at from a perspective of those who cannot have access in another form. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chapman. Are there any further comments? Councillor Charlton and then Councillor Barber.
Through you, your worship, I think it's a great service that the town provides. The guys do it in a timely manner. I know it's not cheap to do, but the residents really appreciate it, and people moving into Elmer from other areas think it's just marvelous. They don't have to load up their stuff and borrow the neighbor's truck and dispose of this stuff. So I know it's a cost item, but our tonnage was up this year. I think it may not be as high other years. And so I just think it's a great service and really well done. Thanks.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Barber.
I think, your worship, following up on Councillor Chapman's comments, as long as the cost is controllable, I understand, or I believe that the people of the town really appreciate this service. If we had collection points, they may be utilized from people that are not residents of the community. We have to be careful of that. But it's a good service. The costs are reasonable and much appreciated by the people.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Are there any further comments or questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Thank you, sir, your worship. Just a quick comment. I think that, we're good stewardships of the environment, providing this service. It's an awful thing to suggest, but it's better to see us pay out and have these collection services available rather than to see items dumped on the roadside somewhere else, elsewhere. So I think it's a great service, and I agree with all the other councillors as well. This is something that the town benefits from, the residents, and I would like to see it continue. I don't think a drop-off point would be as successful.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Andrews. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Worship. As Mr. Krupa suggested, it's sort of staff's job to look at all the options for council. We're not recommending that we discontinue the service. I think our role is to look for ways that there are efficiencies or changes. We're certainly not suggesting that they need to be revamped. It's not staff's job to determine if this program is a want for the community. It's our job to sort of deliver it, but we wouldn't be doing it for our job if we didn't bring up some alternatives to the council. And that's simply what we're doing, is make sure that there are alternatives. And as Christian said, a lot of this program is fixed cost. When we started to drill down into the cost of it, you can see that the time you take a truck and staff it and drive them around town, those are fixed costs. So we were originally focused on how do we get this tonnage down to control costs, when really it's sort of the labor side of things, if you will. And really there's no other way around the labor side than to either discontinue the service, make everyone go to a depot or a drop box or something like that, or sort of continue it. And we sort of felt if we didn't put that in front of council, that we wouldn't be doing what we should be doing as staff.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Councillor Osach, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. I only have one comment. I assume all this bulk waste goes to landfill, correct?
That is correct. It goes to our landfill site. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Christian. Appreciate you coming in. Deputy Mayor, did you have anything further to add? Okay. Hey, if there aren't any further questions or comments, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Clerk 05-22.
That report, Clerk 05-22, respecting 25 Center Street renovation project finish item budget, be received as information, and that council approves the 25 Center Street project finish item budget in the amount of $125,000. It being noted that funds shall be drawn from the approved 25 Center Street renovation capital project budget in the amount of $480,000, and further that council directs staff to work with the project contractor, Accuratus Design and Build Incorporated, to oversee the completion of the finish items within the approved budget.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton. And I'll turn it back over to you, Josh, if you wanted to give us a bit more information on this report.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, and two members of council. This is really a good news report. It's one that we've been working on for some time, and I think was on council's horizon at the outset of this project. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval for a finish item budget for the completion of the 25 Center Street Council Chambers renovation project. As council's aware, the scope of the project outlined in the bid documents that were previously approved and executed in late 2021 were limited to building, structural, mechanical, and electrical engineering. So when the 25 Center Street renovation budget was set out at the outset of the project, additional funds were allocated for finish items within the $480,000 total project budget that were outside of that sort of building, structural, mechanical, and electrical engineering aspects of the main bid document. So to complete these outstanding items, staff have taken some of the initial steps to address the outstanding finish works. So that includes flooring, telecommunications, installation, painting, exterior signage, furnishing of the space, and technological considerations. So an example of that would be we're working towards hybrid meeting solution, and all of that would be in consultation with the project contractor for the finish works, or has been in a consultation for those finish works. So to ensure that project timelines are aligned in a logical manner, and also to proactively address current supply chain disruptions, staff are recommending that the project contractor be provided with a finish item budget to carry out these remaining project works. So more specifically, if council's in favor of this approach, staff would provide quotations that we've already received from local contractors for identified finish works to the project contractor to administer and eventually carry out. So the subcontractors implicated in this arrangement would operate under the insurance and the oversight of the project contractor. the key benefit of this approach really has to do with establishing that clear line of communication between finished item contractors and the project contractor, who's ultimately responsible for overseeing the completion of the project, with substantial completion due by May or June 2022. So for example, and just an example of sort of where we would see an efficiency on this, it would be more efficient for the project contractor to work directly with the flooring vendor and painting contractors to complete those items than it would be for the town to independently procure each finish item. And the reason for that is that the project contractors are already responsible for framing, structural, and drywall components of the project. Just moving down here. So in sum, staff are recommending that council approve the $125,000. And I apologize, I had a typo in the resolution. It should read $125,500 finish item budget for that completion of the 25 Center Street reno project. And if council's in favor of the recommendation, flooring, painting, telecommunications, cabling, internal and external signage, and window and fire escape door replacement works would be facilitated by the project contractor within the approved budget. As previously mentioned, the project contractor has expressed a preference to work with local contractors, and the above finish line item projections are based on quotes received from local contractors and other vendors. It's worth noting that estimates included in the finish item budget reflect and control for current market volatility, and we've framed them sort of in a manner that is conservatively, just to avoid project exceedances for these finish items. We're really hoping that we can get this work done within the budget that we set for the contractor. And I just wanted to add finally that in addition to these above finish works, staff will be presenting an additional report to council seeking authorization and direction for a council chambers layout, and also some of the corresponding IT solutions in the council chambers, respecting the budget on that. And I should note that these additional items, so being the council chambers furniture, and then also the IT considerations, would be funded separately from remaining funds that we have in the 2019 municipal modernization funding balance and an existing project fund balance from the 2020 town hall interior layout changes. And with that, I'll try my best to answer any questions.
Thank you, Josh. Are there any questions for Josh? Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Through you, your worship. So am I correct in thinking that all of the finishings have been decided on by staff?
Go ahead, Josh.
Through your worship, at this point, we've not made any firm selections as far as our specific preferences go. However, I would note that when we speak of sort of flooring, when we speak of drywall and painting, really the objective of staff as it relates to giving this advice to the contractors and working with them to find good vendors would be to sort of maintain the general intent of town hall as it is right now. So at this point, we're not anticipating bringing sort of aesthetic options before council, but if that's council's preference and council would like to have some input on paint and color for carpets and some of that, we certainly could arrange that. I would note though that council will have the final discretion on sort of the layout of the council chamber. So do we want to keep a board style table? We'd like to shift to a horseshoe. All of those decisions will be put before council, likely in the next meeting, if not the meeting after.
Okay.
Is that okay, Councillor Chapman? Are you satisfied with that?
So I guess what he's telling me is that the staff will choose the colors and that according to what we have in the existing building.
Well, not necessarily, Councillor Chapman, because if we as a council do choose to want to pick colors, etc., I think Josh has said that we would just have to direct staff that we do want to be a part of that. But that'll be a later meeting. Go ahead, Josh.
It's just just the vendors themselves that are being chosen.
Yes,
Yes.
I believe that's correct. Go ahead, Josh.
Certainly, through your worship, thank you. And just to further expand on Councillor Chapman's comment, I should have elaborated. Really, I think a large part of the discretion will also be staying within the finished budget. We've noticed that there is a great deal in variance across the flooring, just in terms of prices are very volatile. They seem to be increasing. So a large part of the discretion will be, ensuring that we are meeting the general aesthetic of town hall as it is right now, but also ensuring that we stay within the project budget that's set by council.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Oslach.
Yes, your worship, to Josh. We have a video studio in the Old Town Hall, basically, and I understand it's going to be moved, or the present location under IT. I understand it was under IT, which for further consideration financially, but will it be moved or and from its present location?
Go ahead, Josh.
Through your worship, and to Councillor Oslach, yes, the plan is to move the IT booth into the new council chambers design. We've reached out to the vendor that had previously installed it and that's familiar with the system, and they're in touch with some of the staff that, or sorry, some of the vendors that the town has also been using for telecommunications considerations to date. So we do intend to move that. And the other step that we have taken is we did reach out to Eastlink, just advising them of our intention to move the sound booth.
Go ahead, Councillor Oslach.
To further to Josh, you reached out to the audio firm for the microphones?
Go ahead, Josh.
To Councillor Oslach, yes.
And the all the video equipment will be moved as the TriCaster and the television and the high drive, etc.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, to Councillor Oslach, we intend to utilize all of that equipment. There's nothing wrong with it as far as staff are concerned. We've assessed the sound system, and we're grateful that we will be able to reuse most of that equipment in the new council chambers setup.
Yeah, because it's all relatively new in the last few years. Yeah. Thank you, Josh.
Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. The next report is CAO 1222.
That report, CAO 1222, entitled Thames Valley District School Board Trustee Distribution for the 2022 to 2026 year, be received for information, and that the town of Elmer support designation of Middlesex County by the board resolution as a low population municipality, and further that council forward a copy of the resolution to Elgin County Council and the Thames Valley District School Board.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Andrews. I'll turn this over to Andy. Do you have anything further to add?
Thank you, Mayor French. Just very briefly, this is to preserve the status quo representation between rural and urban as it exists now with Middlesex County. It doesn't have a huge impact on Elmer because we're a bit more of an urban area, but I think it's important to show support for Elgin County broader, where this is a bigger issue. So this is a bit of us lending a hand to help out our neighbors type approach. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions for Andy? Okay, seeing none. Oh, did you have a question, Councillor Oslach? Okay.
No.
All right, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried, thank you. And the next report is CAO 11-22.
That report, CAO 11-22, entitled Library Extension Agreement, be received for information, and that council authorizes the extension of the library agreement to coincide with the renewal of other municipal library agreements in Elgin County.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Charlton. It's pretty self-explanatory. Andy, did you have anything further at all to add?
No, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, are there any questions about this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any matters of urgency or new business this evening? Councillor Charlton?
Yes, through your worship. It's been extremely cold for a couple of weeks, and I was just wondering, does the town have access to a warming center? Is there a specific area in town that people can go to for a warming center if it's required?
Okay, Andy, would you care to answer that question?
Thank you, Mayor French. So yeah, we have been doing a lot of work and having a lot of discussions about that over the last couple of weeks. As council is aware, the EECC was closed by provincial regulations until Monday. So that was previously what we utilized. Right now, the big pressure that we have is would be on Wednesdays and Sunday afternoons, because people are not unable to access Family Central for that period, and the library is also closed. So we are looking at some options to address those specific periods, but we're hoping to utilize it for more when there's an Environment Canada weather warning. And that's when the temperature goes to -30 degrees. So there are other municipalities in the area that do trigger these cold weather warming centers when it goes to -15. But the cold weather warming is also a bit more important in the evenings than the time period that the municipality is looking, which is, you know, the warmest time of day generally. But in a pinch, if there is further really cold weather again this year, we do have the band shell, and I have talked to Tom, and we could potentially open it. The EECC isn't available now, and part of that is because, you know, we've got these marginalized groups and that might not have the same vaccination status. And really, to enter that building, we want to keep up with the provincial regulation that you need to have the QR code. We don't want to have two different groups. And also, we don't really have the room there because we have a tenant that is utilizing the blue room. So right now, which is good for us because we haven't been getting revenue. So when we were closed, so this tenant has been able to operate. So it is a bit of a fluid issue. And right now, I'm waiting on confirmation from Family Central on kind of the extent of the problem in our community. The initial indication is that there isn't a need right now, that there hasn't been a need to address this winter. So I think when we see centers like St. Thomas or London, where there is a huge need on the streets there, we do have the great community providers that are providing the overnight shelter, which is the biggest need for our community right now. But we certainly do want to have a plan in place for if the weather does get cold. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any further matters of urgency or new business? Okay, seeing none. Reading of bylaws and proceedings thereon, 3 readings.
That council approves and gives 3 readings to the bylaw 622, being a bylaw to authorize an intermunicipal agreement for joint ownership of fire communications equipment, and bylaw 0722, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement between the town of Elmer and IntelliVote Systems Incorporated for the provision of internet and telephone voting services for the 2022 municipal election.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Barber, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is inquiries by members. Okay, seeing none. Statements and committee reports. Don't see any hands up for that. There is no report of the mayor. Notice of motion? No, I don't believe there is one. So meeting closed to the public.
That council moves into a meeting closed to the public at 8:21 p.m. to discuss the following matters. Chief Administrative Officer report CAO 1322 respecting a property sale update. Chief Administrative Officer report CAO 1522 respecting a pending property sale update. And Chief Administrative Officer report CAO 1422 respecting human resources matter regarding COVID-19 staffing. And these items are pursuant to section 239(2). C is for the first 2 items and D for the third of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as a subject matter pertains to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality and to labor relations or employee negotiations.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second? Councillor Charlton and Deputy Mayor Andrews, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And we'll just take a moment to move into a meeting close to the public.